See, I believe that circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him. That's from James Allen in As a Man Thinketh. One of the ironies for me is in the neighborhood that I live in Florida, real close to where I live is a very poor area. And I drive through there, and this area in Florida has the highest unemployment rate in the state of Florida. And the yards are the messiest in the state of Florida. Now, that is a real incongruity to me. Why would a neighborhood where everybody's unemployed, or so many people are unemployed, be so sloppy? Why would there be trash all over the front lawns? Why would the garbage not be taken up? These are people who have nothing else to do. They got all day long to work on their lawn and to keep it clean and to paint their house and to do whatever it is that they... But they're not doing that. Most of the time when you drive through there, you see a whole lot of people sitting around in groups, either playing cards or gambling, or there's some drug dealing going on. What I believe is that a person's circumstances reveal a lot about you. That we have choices as we go through our life, regardless of where we're born or what our status is or what our color is or whatever. We still have a lot of choices that we don't exercise, and what we do is we reverse it. We blame our circumstances on why my house isn't nice and why I don't have a lot of money. And we come up with all of these kinds of excuses. And what you have to do to understand the concepts that I'm talking about here is to get that when you get these principles and they become a part of your life, the circumstances of your life are going to start changing dramatically. It isn't the other way around. It isn't that my circumstances are the thing that created all of these problems that I have, and it's the man that I'm married to, or the woman that I'm married to, or the way my children behave, or it's the job I have, or it's my boss, or anything external to yourself. When you change around your attitudes and your beliefs about yourself and about your fellow man and about the universe and about your place in it, and you begin to adopt a loving stance towards all of those things, when you begin to think loving thoughts and positive thoughts and beautiful thoughts, that's what you ultimately have to give away. So instead of being angry at other people or your boss or whatever, what you have is only loving things to give back to them, or positive things or ways of thinking that are in harmony. That's what you have to give away. And when you start giving that away, you start amazingly seeing the circumstances of your life change. See, many times I will be speaking to an audience, or I'll be on television. This happened to me on AM San Francisco just a few months ago. And they were asking me questions about my life and all of this. And they said, well, don't you think that it's really easy for you to say all of these things about being positive and enjoying your life and the perfection of the universe and all of these kinds of things? Because look at you. You're a millionaire. You're a popular author. You've had a lot of fame. You're on television all the time. You've got everything that a person could want in life. It's easy for you to say. And my response was, then I'm the person that they should be listening to. I am not saying these things because I have a lot of money and because I have fame and so on, that maybe I have a lot of money and a lot of fame because I live these things that I'm talking about. And I'm the person who came out of a set of circumstances that everybody else who came out of those circumstances in my family and in my immediate surroundings don't have the things that I have that they think are so important. This money and this fame and all of these accumulations and things. And coming out of an orphanage situation, coming out of poverty, coming out of broken family, coming out of an alcoholic father who abandoned his family, and all of these kinds of things, and having to be put into separate homes and so on, and then living in very, very poor circumstances virtually all of my life, perhaps I am where I am because of these principles, rather than that I can spout these principles because of where I am. That's really my response to people who think that this stuff about higher self and being a more spiritual person, I don't have the time for that. I don't have the luxury for that. My suggestion is that get your priorities in order. Get this stuff that we're talking about here in this program. Get this and understand that you are the product of the way that you think, and that the circumstances of your life are revealing you. They didn't make you. And that if there are things about your life that you don't like or would like to improve upon, whatever they are, whether it's making more money or improving your relationships or getting a better job or getting your book published or whatever it is that you have got going in your life, that if you stop focusing on that and begin to look at what kind of a human being are you and how do you fit into this whole body of humanity, And are you part of the solution, or are you part of the problem? And are you in harmony, first of all, with yourself as a human being? And do you love the self that you are and treat it always with respect and love, the love that it deserves? And consequently then cooperate with the other people around you. Do you send them love because that's all you have to give away? Do you radiate love, or are you trying to get it from other people? And do you see the miracle that you are? I said that I would like to talk about the three levels of consciousness, A being individual consciousness or ego consciousness. And I said that there are two people inside each and every one of us. The first one is the ego. The second person inside each and every one of us is what I call the sacred or the higher self. And this sacred or higher self really doesn't care whether we win or lose or how much we get or who we're better than or how much we have. It's not interested in that. This part of us that lives in every single one of us only wants one thing. It wants us to be at peace. At peace. And it wants to choose peace. As it says in the Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. I remind myself that every day when I drive my children to school in the morning and they're fighting over who called shotgun and who gets to sit in the front and who gets to push the buttons and who listens to the rap music and who's daddy's my turn this time, and they're going back and forth, and I just remind them, I can choose peace rather than this. And I'll say, look out or I'm going to push my button. And they say, okay. They don't want to hear that crappy music or whatever. All right? The ability to choose peace. One of the selections that was most profound in my life that I wrote an essay about for 60 Days to Enlightenment in Wisdom of the Ages was from Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet, from a selection called the Gitanjali, which won the Nobel Prize for Poetry and Literature in 1927. He said, I went out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame, but I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. The ego just wants to be right. The higher self wants to be kind, wants to be at peace. And if you can just begin to shift that, just ask yourself, as what I'm about to say, I always tell people this in counseling groups and so on, that there are 4 words, that if you learn these 4 words, they'll eliminate all conflict in all of your relationships. These 4 words are, you're right about that. No matter what it is somebody says to you, you give them that. You're right about that. Someone says, you're really a jerk. So, you're right about that. Because that doesn't make somebody right. She'll say something to me, you're supposed to be home at 7:15 and it's now 6:30. There was a time when I used to say, wait a minute, you're not my mother. I don't have to explain to you when I come home. I'm the one that's out working. And who do you think buys all these, there was all that ego stuff that was a part of my life. You've all heard those before, right? Now I just simply say, honey, she said, don't hold those 4 fingers up. I hate it when you do that. Now I notice she holds the 4 fingers up, but she's doing it one at a time. She's going like, But it's the idea that just as you're about to respond to somebody, instead of saying, well, I need to be right and I need to prove myself, I'm just going to stop. I am no longer. And every single person that operates at these higher levels that I'm describing here tonight, that I've known, they have no need to be in charge, to be right, to be dominant, to be they allow themselves to realize, as the story of Buddha, when he had someone following him around for 3 days, and all they ever did was criticize him and find fault with him all the time. Everything he said, everything he did, they found, and always what would come out of him would be this peace and this love. And finally, after 3 days, the man who was criticizing him said, I don't understand. I've done nothing but insult you for 3 days and make a fool of you, and you always respond with kindness and love. He said, how can you do that? And the Buddha said these magical words. When someone offers you a gift and you don't accept that gift,
to whom does the gift belong? So if someone offers you a gift of their anger, their hatred, their insults, but you don't accept it, who owns the gift? And why would you go around being upset about something that belongs to someone else? It's not yours in the first place. That's a higher level of awareness. That's being able to choose peace.
This arrived in my home, about a year before I started writing Wishes Fulfilled. And it's called the I Am Discourses. The I Am Discourses are, I think, one of the great spiritual texts on the planet today. You can pick it up, especially Volume 3. It's published by the Saint Germain Press. Saint Germain is, I believe, because I'm a student of Yogananda, and Sri Yukteswar, his teacher, who was born on the same day I was in only 1855 instead of 1940, like me. And they speak about this saint that is capable, who always keeps a young body. His name is Babaji. How many have heard the name Babaji? Yeah, this is an audience. I don't have to ask that. Saint Germain is Babaji, in my opinion. This is someone who shows up in a young body. And when you read Ascended Masters Training, The Unveiled Mysteries, The Magic Presence, and the I Am Discourses, which I have read all of them and studied them before I actually channeled Wishes Fulfilled. But let me just share with you just something here at the very beginning of it. Life, in all its activities, everywhere manifest, is God in action. Remember what I said earlier, the life in your body is weightless, and it is God. It is what you originated from, it is what you will return to. It is where my mom is right now. And it is only through lack of the understanding of applied thought and feeling that mankind is constantly interrupting the pure flow of that perfect essence of life, which would, without interference, naturally express its perfection everywhere. Saint Germain has come to me. I feel as if I have spoken to him. And one of the things that I know from Saint Germain, from Babaji, is that it's only 1 in a million people who spend any amount of their time giving thanks to the I Am presence that is your very essence, your being. Not giving thanks for all of the bounty that you have in your life and for your health and for all of the nice things, but to be in a state of gratitude for the awareness that who you are is this divine essence, this divine being. And when I do the meditation, one of the things that I say is I am in a state of continuous gratitude for the I Am presence that speaks through my mouth and through my body and through my writing and so on. It's staying in constant contact with the awareness that there is something divine that is what I am. And every time I use this word, I am. The natural tendency of life is love, peace, beauty, harmony, and opulence. This, by the way, is what Lao Tzu said as well. For life cares not who uses it, but is constantly surging to pour more of its perfection into manifestation, always with that lifting process which is ever inherent within itself. I am is the activity of that life. How strange it is that students with sincere interest do not seem to get the true meaning of those two words. When you say and feel, I am, you release the spring of eternal, everlasting life to flow on its way unmolested. In other words, you open wide the door of its natural flow. When you say, I am not, you shut the door in the face of this mighty energy. I often tell my audiences, God didn't say when Moses asked, what is your name and who shall I say sent me? He didn't say, my name is, I hope things work out for you. He said, my name is, I am that I am. That meaning, when he says, I am that, that was Nisargadatta's great autobiography, or biography, and a book that I have studied for 30 years now. and he was known as the I Am Guru in India. And these two words, I am, have so much power within them. I am is the full activity of God. Having placed before you so often the truth of God in action, I wish you to understand its first expression in individualization, in you. All right? The first expression of every individual everywhere in the universe, either spoken word, silent thought, or feeling, is I am, recognizing its own conquering divinity. The student, endeavoring to understand and apply these mighty yet simple laws, must stand guard more strictly over his thoughts and expression in word or otherwise. For every time you say, I am not, I cannot, I have not, you are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, throttling that great presence within you. When you use the words I am, you are in union, you are in yoga with God. So when I do my yoga practice, and there's certain of these postures and asanas that I have a little more difficulty with others, especially balancing ones and so on, before I start the asana, my inner meditation is, I am well balanced. I am perfect balance. I can do this. I am perfect balance. And as I do this, I begin to see that I am speaking to this body.
I wrote a book a few years back called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based upon the ancient teachings of Lao Tzu in a book called the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu reminds us that all being originates in non-being. Jesus put it this way in the New Testament, it's the spirit that gives life. That you didn't really come from your parents. All of us came from this place called spirit. And when you showed up here in this world, you showed up here from a tiny little drop of human protoplasm, a speck, if you will, and everything that was in that little speck that became you, everything that you needed was in that tiny little speck. One of the most important metaphors that I ever use is that the first 9 months of your life, from the moment of your conception until the moment of your birth, everything was being handled for you. There was nothing for you to do. You don't get consumed with the color your eyes are going to be or what your body is going to look like. It's all taken care of for you. You just surrender. I call it a future pull. And it's pulling. It's pulling you in the direction of whatever it is that you were supposed to be. And to me, it's not too great a stretch to say if everything you needed for the physical journey was already handled in there, then why not everything for the rest of the journey as well? All of your purpose, it's in there. All of what your personality, it's in there. Everything that you were to be, not just the physical you, but everything, if you just let go and allow. And so we're born. And we look at this beautiful little creature. As parents, I have 8 children. I've seen it happen many times. And you look at this beautiful little child and you look at it and you say, great work, God. Great work. Couldn't be any better. We'll take over from here. And then we're surrounded by all these people, our family, our culture, wherever we go. And we begin to be told that we can't really trust in who we are. We have to trust in something outside of ourselves. And we're on a journey towards ambition. Once you begin to say, we'll take over from here, you introduce something, you just take this perfection and you just edge out the Creator. You edge God out. E-G-O. Ego. This ego is the part of us that starts to tell us who you are is not this perfect divine creation, this piece of God that you came from. It doesn't say that. It says who you are is what you have. It begins with things like our toys, and then our bank accounts, and then the possessions that we have. Before you know it, we begin to identify ourselves on the basis of our possessions. We begin to take on a set of beliefs about the more that I have, the more valuable I am as a person. And so we spend our lives taking these young children and immersing them in a culture that emphasizes more. It becomes almost a mantra of the ego. You have to have more. And the more you have, the more you are aware of how much other people are trying to take it away from you. The more you get consumed with how do I protect it and how do I make more of what I have. The dilemma here is that if you are what you have and things go away, then who you are also goes away in the process.
Second component of this ego is the idea that not only is who I am what I have, but it's what I do. And what I do becomes this thing called achievement. And in this whole world of believing that I am what I do, we become consumed with this whole idea of my success, my value, my worth as a human being is based upon how much I accomplish.
So I have to make more money, I have to get a promotion, I have to compete with everybody else who's trying to get what I have.
We are taught this over and over and over again. All of our young people are taught this when they go out into athletics. The most important thing you can do is be number one, and you say, we're number one, we're better than everybody else. And we constantly find ourselves in this competitive notion again of believing that our world is one in which we have to compete. That's what the ego says. Now, the third aspect of this is the idea that I am what other people think of me. That is, I am my reputation. Particularly, this is relevant for young people who are taught that you have to dress the way other people think, and if other people don't like you, then there's something wrong with you. If you're consumed with that, then you're going to be something different every time you turn around. Now, this is particularly relevant with women, especially in relationship to the family. Women are often taught in our culture and our society that the only way that you can fulfill yourself is by how you relate to your family, to yourself as a daughter, to yourself as a mother, to yourself as a grandmother. And while these are very important and creative aspects of every woman's life, if that's the choice that they make, it's not necessarily the only thing. And many women feel that deep within them that they have a calling to accomplish something great, to make a contribution. And oftentimes we'll put it aside. So what I encourage women to think is, don't ignore that calling inside of you. Don't ignore the part of you that says you came here to create something powerful, and you have just as much of an influence in doing that, just as much of a right to do that as anyone else does. We move into then the later parts of the ego, which talks about something called separation. And the ego has a very strong belief system that who I am is separate from everybody else. And then another component of the ego teaches us that I'm also separate from everything that's missing in my life, from all the things that I'd like to have. And then finally, the ego teaches us the most egregious error of all. It teaches us that we are separate from God. And one of the simple constructs that you learn in the afternoon of your life when you shift into the meaning phase of your life is to realize that you came from a source. We can call it God, we can call it Tao, it doesn't matter what we call it. And that this source is everywhere. There's no place that it is not. It must be, because it creates everything. Everything comes from this source. Then it must be in me. If there's no place that it's not, it must be in me. And if it must be in me, it must also be in whatever it is that I feel to be missing from my life. If you know that, then in some way, everything that's missing from your life that you would like to have, you're already connected to it in spirit. And all you have to do is figure out a way to align yourself with that and have a knowing that you're already connected to it. You just have to bring it on its way.
Part of me really knows, more than just believes, but knows that when you're born and when you show up here, your work shows up here with you. It's placed in your heart. And too often we ignore it in the name of fulfilling a destiny that has been laid out for us by other people and so on. So these people that I will be referring to, what I call ancient wisdom. This ancient wisdom came from people who felt something very profound in their hearts that they absolutely knew that they had to express. And it's almost as if you have to find within yourself what it is that you know you are here for and follow that instinct independent of what anybody else out there might think about it, without being objectionable and nasty and recalcitrant and so on, but still having within you this knowing that I have certain music that I have to play. I have certain things that I have to do. And I feel it deeply, and I feel connected to that. And not allowing myself to do it means that I might spend that time. I might get to that place at the end of my life and say, what if it's been wrong? What if I didn't listen to that inner voice. An ancient teacher, his name is Patanjali. And Patanjali is known in the ancient world 1 to 3 centuries before the birth of Christ. There's no actual date of actual record of his birth and death. And he was the one who wrote the original Yoga Sutras and wrote a wonderful book that I immersed myself in a few years back called How to Know God. And Patanjali, one of the things that he said to these people, now remember, we're talking about something that's going back maybe 3,500 years or more. And here was this great teacher in the ancient world. And this is one of the things that he said. When you are inspired, the word inspired comes from in spirit. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you're truly inspired in your life, that is, when you're doing what you know you're here for, everything seems to work. The right people show up. You don't worry about being hungry. You don't worry about being tired. You're not concerned with whether or not anybody's going to like it or not. When you're truly inspired, that is, whether it's cooking or being with your children or writing or composing music or filling out tax forms, whatever it might be, when you feel inspired, everything works. And the reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired.
When you are inspired, all your thoughts break their bonds. As I explained earlier, being inspired is equivalent to being back in spirit. Before we showed up in form, our mind and the mind of God were synonymous, which means that we were free from the bonds of the ego mind. This is simply how the world of spirit works. It's impossible to have limiting boundaries or self-imposed shackles placed on us. When we're in harmony with the mind of God, we simply don't have thoughts that tell us we can't accomplish something. After all, our thoughts are of a higher energy. Returning to spirit results in a grand sense of being in tune with our uniquely divine purpose. Just imagine being able to go on and on for hours at a time without experiencing fatigue or hunger or thirst or mental exhaustion, all thanks to one factor, the willingness to be back in spirit. When you are inspired, your mind transcends limitations. When we're inspired, we remember that God is always in us and we're always in God. So we're incapable of thinking limited thoughts. We're transcendent. We've gone beyond the world of boundaries and entered a space of creative knowing. In other words, we surrender. We put ourselves under the guidance and control of our purposeful force. When you are inspired, your consciousness expands in every direction. When we're in spirit, every direction is possible for us at every moment because our consciousness happens within our mind. Now, this inner world of ours, reunited with its originating essence, doesn't think in only one direction. Rather, it allows all possibilities. Our consciousness is in the absolute state of allowing. All resistance in the form of thoughts is non-existence. When you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive. These dormant forces will come to all of us. They're actually alive and well and have been working on our behalf for as long as we've been here. Yet they appear to be dead to some because they've left behind their divine purpose, which we decided on long before we ever took on the insane ego. When you're inspired, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. The act of being inspired by some great purpose allows us to feel the essence of a spiritual being having a human experience, rather than the other way around. Patanjali suggests that we could never even dream of our greatness because we've been imprisoned by our beliefs about who we are. We bought into the idea that we were limited in our ability to create an all-encompassing life, and we were certain that we had no choice in our own destiny. We defended our need to acquire more and to live a scarcity consciousness in which we competed with everyone else for a meager slice of the whole pie. All of these imprisoning thoughts result when we're not guided by spirit. Moving into a state of inspiration removes all of those restraining ideas. As Patanjali notes, we'll discover someone we couldn't imagine because we were incarcerated in ego's jail. imprisoned by what we now recognize from our inspired viewpoint as an illusion. We need to awaken from the bad dream that has stupefied us in the fog of ego and live from the blissful perspective offered by being in spirit.
Surrender to this radical notion that is required for you to awaken to the awareness that all habits begins with thoughts. It's radical, I know. I know it's not something you're accustomed to hearing, but you have a habit because you have intended it to be there. Now what you do is you surrender to a new consciousness, a thought that whispers, I can do this thing in this moment. I will receive all the help that I need as long as I stay with this intention and go within for the assistance I need. Now you announce to yourself that you're no longer that old habitual person. For just a second, just for a second, you awaken just for a moment. Then you go to the next moment with this surrender, not thinking about tomorrow or anything in the future. In the now, in this moment, you have the answer. That's how you go about making those seemingly difficult changes, one step at a time, with an inner grace that allows you to surrender and stop fighting. All those habits, those things that have plagued you for your entire lifetime, that you think you can't change, that are just a part of you, are nothing more than thoughts turned to intention, turned into laziness, addiction, short-temperedness, phobias, fatigue, whatever. Change the thought, change the intention, and you no longer have those as your consciousness. What you can do is create an inventory of all the things in your life which you continue to pursue, but truly you don't want in your life. This is actively putting into your life the intention of no longer pursuing the things that you don't want, which may have been your habit for a lifetime. So you remind yourself of the wisdom of the notion that you never get enough of what you don't want. Then you take this hour, this very hour, this day, now, and you create an inventory of what you would like next to the one you have outlined. Rather than deception, you might substitute truth in your relationships. Rather than booze, you might substitute 8 glasses of water a day. Rather than anger, you might substitute love and harmony. By assessing that which continues to reign into your life because you're letting it in and encouraging the leaks in your life, you automatically have the handle on a new way of eliminating the erosion in your life. You fill your life with that which you don't want, largely because you've simply never considered the available options, and you fear the glorious harmony and the intimacy that comes from refusing to chase after the poisons that are killing you. By becoming aware of them, by using your invisible miracle-making mind to create that which you truly want and know you deserve, you find yourself living in harmony. You begin to experience in the physical world all that which is what you thought you were entitled to create. Inventory your life and get it on purpose, and substitute the things that you are pursuing that you don't want with the opposite. Substitute what you do want and begin then to pursue that. And you see it works. It's like real magic. Thought, intention, and no longer pursuing that which doesn't work for you. It's like getting your life off of scatteredness, off of being splintered, and being on purpose.
This is a very important and significant quality that separates out great teachers, great philosophers, great thinkers, poets, prophets, the people that, again, that we respect and admire, is that they are not doing what they're doing because of what is going to come to them. They're doing what they're doing because this inner voice says, I can't not do it. I'll die if I don't. I've got to get my music out. I can't die with my music in me. And so people who are detached from outcome, the irony of being detached from outcome, I think is summed up in Thoreau's definition of success. I think the best definition of success I've ever heard came right from his mouth. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. That is, if you find what you know you have to do, what your intuition, what your inner voice tells you is why you're here, and you pursue that and let go of outcome, be unconcerned with how it's going to work out, you're going to find more and more things arriving and showing up in your life. I mean, it's been absolutely true for me. When I detach from outcome, I do my best writing. When I detach from being concerned about how an audience is going to react to me, I feel like I give my best talks. And when I stop being concerned, I mean, I had to learn this a long time ago. I didn't know this back even 20 years ago. I can remember calling my agent and friends and saying, where am I on the bestseller list? Back when Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings and Sky's the Limit, those books were topping the bestseller list. And then one day, I don't know if it was my wife, probably was, said to me, you're not on the bestseller list. Your book is on the bestseller list. You are not the bestseller list. Big lesson, huge lesson. Detach from whether people are going to buy it, whether people are going to like it, and know in your heart, and then let go and just watch. And then it starts to show up. I remember when I so desperately wanted to do any national television back in the 70s. Desperately. You know, any show that I could get on, Phil Donahue or the Today Show, Good Morning America, the Tonight Show, and all of that. And none of that was coming. But I was out there, and I had purchased the first couple of printings of my book, and I went out there and I distributed them to various bookstores. I mean, I did crazy things. I filled my car with books, and because every time somebody told me I couldn't do it as a scurvy elephant, I would just say, oh yeah, kind of thing, and thank them for telling me what I couldn't do, and then go out and do it. And then one day, I kind of let go of that, and I wasn't concerned any longer about trying to get on this show. I had a publicist who was doing that. Then I got a phone call from one of the talent coordinators on The Tonight Show, and he called up and he said, would you like to come on and do a pre-interview? Fly out to California. I said, great. I flew out to California, I did a pre-interview, and then I flew back to where I was staying in Michigan. Then I got a phone call in Michigan saying, you can do the show next Monday night. It was in August. It was 1976. And Shecky Greene was the host. And I said, great, I'll go on with Shecky Greene. I love Shecky Greene. I flew back out there. I did the show. It was fantastic. I got 20 minutes, the author spot, you know, but we had 2 segments. And it was great. But it was August something, 1976, and it was the day of the Republican National Convention. And Robert Dole was giving the keynote address. And the first time in the history of The Tonight Show, they preempted The Tonight Show. After I had flown back to tell everybody about watch me on The Tonight Show, they had preempted it, and because his speech went too long. I have never been a real big fan of Bob Dole. No, that's just kidding, of course. So I was didn't know what was going to happen and so on. Apparently the next day at the meeting, this friend of mine who was working on the show, his name was Howard Papish, he went in and told them about this guest that had been on Monday night, and Johnny Carson had talked to them and said, look, if he was a good guest, then why don't we invite him to come back out and appear with me before that show airs. They called me back, flew me back out to Michigan, from Michigan. This time there was a limo waiting for me. When I got to the Tonight Show, I did the show on Wednesday night. It was great. We had about 7 or 8 minutes, but we got cut short. And Johnny said to me, would you like to stay over and do the show again tomorrow night? Because we didn't really have enough time to give you. I said, no, I'm busy. I've got my screen door. I said, no. I said, of course. So I did the show the next night. Then on Monday, they showed the preempted show that had been preempted from the week before. So from having absolutely no national exposure of any kind, I had 3 Tonight Show appearances in 4 days. And it's about that business of advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams. Going out there, doing what your heart tells you to do. I can't tell you how many books I get from people have written this book, and please give me an endorsement, and please tell me how to go about doing. They want these long letters, and I always respond, just do it. Just do it. You can't write my speech. You can't deliver my speech. You can't do it the way I did it. What does your heart tell you? Go out there and never stop. Have that passion and detach from the outcome. Such a powerful lesson. Let go of what's going to come to you, and what is going to come to you will keep showing up in larger and larger and larger amounts.
I believe in being, not striving, arriving. All right? You have to be your goal, as it were. You have to not be looking for the truth, you have to be truth. You can't be looking for healing or a healing method out there at all. You have to be truth. And when you are it, it is never something that eludes you. I just had a great experience. On the 1st of January of this year, I quit drinking caffeine. Okay? I had a bad addiction to not Coca-Cola, but Diet Coke, Tab. I could drink a crowd pleaser. Easy. In a speech, I could. Or Diet Pepsi or one of those things, those big 64 ounces. I was drinking 8 to 10 cans of that stuff a day. Inadvertently, I just didn't know. I'd have it for breakfast, I'd have it in the afternoon, and I'd always had one when I was driving, and whenever I'd give a speech, I had one. And my wife had said to me, and everybody who knew me was saying to me, that's the thing that's got you. That's the one that you can't get rid of. You talk about being, and it's not good for you. You know how you feel when you drink too much of that stuff. Then I heard a tape by a man named Ram Dass. Ram Dass had a tape about this Buddhist monk who was the son of a Buddhist saint. And this Buddhist saint was a woman. And there's only been like 4 female Buddhist saints ever in the Theravadan Buddhism. And the woman was very upset with her son because he was a narc in Thailand. All right? And in Thailand, they have the highest incidence of heroin addiction in the world. The heroin addicts are on the streets everywhere. The woman would say to her son, instead of imprisoning these people, instead of punishing them, instead of putting them in jail, instead of all of these things that you do, why don't you try to help them? Why don't you send them love? Why don't you, as a saint would say, okay? And he said, but I don't know what to do. And she encouraged him to study Theravadan Buddhism, and he did. And this is the most austere of all of the fields of Buddhism. It is the area of Buddhism in which you have to practice like 130 austerities a day. All right? You don't sleep on a mattress, you sleep on the floor. You don't look at anybody of the opposite sex. You don't dance. You watch every single thing that you eat. You say prayers all the time. A lot of these austerities, physical austerities. Well, he got into it, okay? And he thought that these people were too wild for him, right? So he invented like 30 more austerities of his own. And he was practicing 160 of them a day. And Ram Dass said when he met him, he was like meeting a tree trunk, all right? He was that firm. And what he would do is he would take this truck and he would go through the streets of Bangkok. And he would say to the heroin addicts, if you want to get rid of your addiction in 1 week, 1 week's time, jump on the truck and we'll take you to the monastery and you'll be rid of it in 1 week, guaranteed. He would get these large numbers of people that would jump on. Every week he would take another batch of these addicts. And I'm talking heroin, the hardest thing in the world for us to overcome with will. And he would take them there, and the first thing he would say to them was, this is your only chance. This is the only chance that you're going to have in life to be rid of your addiction. And then he would say to them, I am the treatment. I am bigger than the addiction. And I will show you that. And he would take heroin. And he wouldn't have any effect on him at all. He just wouldn't even react to it. His mind. He had trained himself to be bigger than the addiction and showed them that. And then he would put them through this violent purging, vomiting kind of thing to cleanse out their system and so on. But the thing that he talked about that is the most profound to me is the idea of becoming the treatment, being, the psychology of being. I have taken Maslow's notion of the psychology of being to levels now in my life to challenge myself in areas that I never thought were even possible before. And one of them was with this minor addiction, caffeine, Tab. He would laugh. Tab? You're having trouble with Tab? I admit it's not major, okay? But nevertheless, for me, it owned me. And I let it own me for over 20 years, all right? This was the stuff that was, it was my last addiction, if you will. Smoking had been something I hadn't had anything to do with for 25 years. And drinking, no part of it. It doesn't interest me. And putting poisons into my body and all of these kind of things. And keeping myself in shape, no problem. It was this thing that I kept holding on to. So what I did on the 1st of January this year is I re-listened to that tape, and I became the treatment. It's an amazing thing. See, when you take something into your body that you know isn't good for you or that you don't like, or let's say it's a cigarette if that's what you're trying to quit, or if it's alcohol or caffeine or too much sugar or whatever it is, and you consume that, what happens is, as that goes through you, it becomes you. You become it. You become one with the poison. And every time you do that, you are the poison. You're not consuming poison. You are not using a method of putting poison into your system. It's not that. That's one step removed from being. Being means you are it. It is you. You are one. You are at unity with the poison. All you have to understand with any addiction that you may have, any kind of an addiction, is that once you become the treatment and you stop being the poison, it's not even a challenge anymore. I mean, it's so easy. I'm not that anymore. That's not what I am anymore. Not that I've mastered it or that I've got a method that's great that I want to tell you about this method. It's that I am no longer it. It is no longer me. And I am someplace else now. When you get that, when you understand that notion of being and beginning to apply that in your life, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's like in religion, people are looking for the 10 Commandments. Okay? But in the Bible, it says, live of the truth, doesn't it? The whole idea of the kingdom of heaven, I mean, that's one of the great secrets of the universe that is so simple. I mean, the kingdom of heaven isn't this place that you're going to get to. It is within. It is what you carry around with you. And when you are the 10 Commandments, you don't need them. You don't need any of that. You simply are being that. And when that is you and you are it, you are what Christ called, of the truth. All right? Not looking for it, not trying to get it from someone else, not hoping that someone else can reveal it to you. It is what you are.
And that word infinite is a very important word to think about because it's the opposite of finite. Finite means something begins and ends. If it didn't end any place or didn't begin any place, we wouldn't be able to call it finite. We would say it is always continuing. The minute that it stops, the minute we have a form to it, the minute we place anything on it that is associated with this physical corporeal world that we all live in, it moves from the infinite to the finite. So to try to define that which is infinite with a brain or a mind that is finite is an impossibility. Lao Tzu knew this and understood this. It's why meditation is such an important part of the process of coming to our highest self, coming to know who we are. It's the place where there are no beginnings. Herman Melville once said that God's one and only voice is silence. Is silence. It's the one place where there's nothing finite there. And Blaise Pascal, the famous French philosopher and scientist, once said that all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. But most of us just aren't comfortable with this because we have come to believe and trust in the evidence for who we are is on the basis of that which we can touch and see and feel and smell, what our 5 senses tell us. But our 5 senses lie to us. William Blake pointed that out beautifully in one of his poems back in 1777. He said, to see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and infinity in an hour, we are all led to believe a lie. When we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night, to perish in a night, while the soul slept in beams of light. We are all infinite beings in a temporary human experience. I've said it over and over again. Whenever people ask me what's my very favorite quote, my very favorite observation, it came from Pierre Teilhard, the French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his outrageous ideas. He said that we're not here as human beings having a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. We are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And coming to a place where we live our lives from that infinite place and beginning to know our soul. So getting to know the soul, the spirit, and not identifying ourselves on the basis of our physical senses. It's the essence of my newest book, which is a PBS special called Wishes Fulfilled. It's the whole message behind all of it, is to really come up with a specific way to come in contact with this infinite part of ourselves. Now remember, if it's infinite, it doesn't stop any place. It doesn't start any place. That's by definition infinite. So if something doesn't start and doesn't stop, what is it doing? It has to be expanding, doesn't it? The minute it stops expanding, it's finite. We're no longer talking about the soul. We're talking about what Blake said, we've become, we see with, not through our eyes. So here's what I jotted down. The ideal of the soul, the thing that it asks for, is neither knowledge, nor light, nor happiness. The ideal of the soul is space, immensity. The one thing it needs, more than anything else, is to be free to expand and to reach out and to embrace the infinite. Yeah, the ideal of the soul is infinity, because that's what the soul is. All of us are here in bodies that we believe is who we are. We're totally convinced of it. I was in a 21-year-old body, and I can't find any part of it anywhere on the planet. But while I was in it, I was absolutely convinced that this is who I am. And then I moved into another body, and another body, and another body. And the same is true for each and every one of us here, that there is some part of us that is infinite, that is the soul, that is the spirit,